Without funds to spare, I found myself faced with an unfortunate situation. An indebted, incompetent craftsman owed me a hefty sum of $500,000 by month's end. Enter Wilson, a new loan officer, whose arrival at my office stirred immediate tension. She wasted no time in demanding full repayment, insisting that extending a loan to an aging woman, teetering on the edge of financial collapse, offered no assurance of reimbursement. Better settle the debt while you still have breath, she remarked, her tone dripping with rudeness. My patience wore thin as anger surged within me. Fine, I'll repay the $500,000, I snapped, though I harbored a deep-seated sense of resentment towards Wilson's brash demeanor. However, my declaration of repayment was met with mocking laughter from Wilson, who seemed to find amusement in my predicament. A lousy banker like you will surely regret this, she jeered, her laughter echoing through the room. Despite my simmering rage, I resolved to retaliate quietly, though it appeared Wilson remained oblivious to my thinly veiled threat. Ignoring her continued laughter, I introduced myself as Smith, a seasoned gardener at the age of 60. For 35 years, I had toiled in the earth, cultivating my craft at Smith Landscape Design, a company I now proudly preside over as president. My journey into gardening began under my father's tutelage, a legacy passed down from generation to generation. It took years of dedication to hone my skills, finally earning the trust to manage projects independently at the age of 25. A decade ago, when my father's health faltered due to stomach cancer, I assumed the mantle of president, determined to carry on our family legacy despite the shifting landscape of modern living. With the rise of condos and apartments eclipsing traditional homes with gardens, my commitment to the craft remains steadfast. Many of our clients, particularly the elderly, still cherish their garden spaces but struggle to maintain them, though our business weathered temporary setbacks. The closure of rival landscaping firms has ensured our stability within the community. At 60, I stand as a testament to resilience and dedication, with a firm resolve to continue nurturing both gardens and community for years to come. Despite reaching 60, I remain active and resolute in stabilizing our family business, ensuring its continuity for the benefit of my children. That's been my unwavering commitment. Then, one day, a banker named Brown appeared at Smith Landscape Design, the company I oversee. Brown had been our loan officer since my father's tenure as president. With a tinge of regret, Brown expressed his decision to retire. I'm grateful for all the support Smith has offered me, he conveyed warmly. Your successor will be Wilson from our bank, he continued, gesturing towards a young woman by his side. Wilson, a youthful banker, greeted me briefly, though her response was subdued. When conversation shifted to pleasantries with Brown, I couldn't shake off the concern gnawing at me. Wilson's demeanor, perhaps a result of her youth, left me questioning the wisdom of entrusting our financial matters to her. Not long after our previous banker's retirement, Wilson made her first visit to our office. Hello, I'm Wilson from Trust Bank, she announced. My boss sent me to greet you. Her casual approach caught me off guard, leaving me momentarily speechless. I couldn't help but question the appropriateness of Wilson's candid admission about her visit. Thank you for taking the time to come here, I managed, though my forced smile likely betrayed my thoughts. Wilson's response, however, was far from conciliatory. What's with that tone? Are you implying I shouldn't have come? She retorted, her annoyance palpable. My irritation flared at Wilson's presumptuous attitude. No, it's not that, I shot back. It's just unusual to hear someone so frankly admit they're visiting a client because their boss told them to. With a dismissive wave, I added, anyway, I'm busy, I don't have time to waste on meaningless things like this. Wilson's abrupt departure left me stunned. In all my 60 years, I'd never encountered such rudeness. For a moment, I questioned whether it had all been a surreal dream. Within a week, Wilson returned to our office, her face flushed with anger. You apologize to me right now, she demanded, her voice rising. If you give me a profound apology, I won't involve the police. We can settle this matter without their intervention. Confused, I asked for clarification. I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you please explain? Don't play dumb, Wilson snapped. An employee of yours demanded $100,000 from my grandmother for unsolicited garden maintenance and instructed her to transfer it to a specified account. Shock washed over me at the accusation against our employee. I assure you, I responded firmly, our company only accepts cash payments. We would never instruct a customer to transfer money to a specified account. We typically receive payment directly from our clients upon completing our services. Do you have any evidence to support the accusation against one of our employees? I countered confidently. Wilson responded with equal assertiveness, stating, my grandmother mentioned being contacted by someone named Williams from Smith Landscape Design who allegedly deceived her into paying $100,000 as the president. It's your responsibility to address this, despite having 80 employees across various departments, including gardeners, apprentices, sales, and accounting staff. I was certain there was no one named Wilson in our company. Please give me a moment to verify, I replied before returning with the employee roster. Due to privacy regulations, I cannot disclose this information, but I can confirm that there is no employee named Williams in our company. I see you're adamant about denying responsibility. If that's your stance, I'll devise a strategy, Wilson declared before leaving. Her intentions lingered in my thoughts, causing unease. A few days later, Wilson visited my office once more, demanding the full repayment of $500,000 by month end, dismissing any possibility of extending the loan. This abrupt demand didn't seem aligned with the bank's directives. Why is the office in deficit, and why must the entire loan amount be repaid this month? I calmly inquired, seeking clarification. However, Wilson persisted with disrespectful remarks and a condescending smile, claiming that due to the current lack of demand for landscaping, repayment was urgent. In a shocking twist, Wilson whispered an even more outrageous proposition: if you repay $500,000, 5 times the amount my grandmother allegedly lost, I'll drop the matter. Incensed by Wilson's audacity, I agreed to repay the full amount, warning of repercussions. Wilson's laughter echoed when I vowed retaliation, but it seemed she remained undeterred, continuing to mock my resolve. The following day, I dialed the bank's number and connected with a customer service representative. Hello, this is Smith. Thank you for your ongoing support. Could you kindly ask your loan officer, Wilson, to refrain from visiting my office? It's causing unnecessary trouble, I requested. The representative assured me that the branch manager would promptly address the situation. When the call ended, I overheard another voice nearby, possibly another bank employee, remarking, her again. How many times has it been now? This hinted at Wilson's recurring behavior with other clients. Stepping outside the office, I found Wilson waiting for me. There you are. Hiding won't help. Sign these papers immediately, she demanded, thrusting termination documents for our loan agreement. Is this decision from the bank or solely yours? I inquired. Wilson's response was brusque, asserting it was the bank's stance and dismissing my right to protest, as she pressed for my signature. I informed her that I had just contacted the bank, prompting her to falter. Why did you call the bank? I thought you were avoiding me. Wilson stammered, visibly unnerved. Sensing an opportunity, I directed the branch manager, who had just arrived, to our location. With a concerned expression, he escorted us to the reception area, expressing regret for Wilson's misconduct. Casting a stern glance at her, he questioned, why would you mistreat one of our most valued customers, who has consistently supported our bank, despite Wilson's protests? I recounted her actions to the manager. Addressing Wilson, the manager posed a poignant question: if you discovered your own grandmother had been scammed, would you approach the scammer directly or report it to the authorities first? Wilson's silence spoke volumes. Distraught and unable to think clearly, I challenged Wilson's defiant attitude, making the branch manager pause deeply. If you were in my shoes, faced with a scam targeting your own family, would you calmly report it to the authorities? I questioned. Sensing her resistance, the manager interjected, reminding Wilson of our esteemed customer status and highlighting the absence of any record linking Smith Landscape's designs to the alleged incident. I pointed out the possibility of an outsider posing as an employee to make the fraudulent call, which seemed to finally register with Wilson. Her demeanor shifted abruptly, and she fell silent. Upon verifying Wilson's grandmother's details, we found no evidence of any landscaping request from her, especially considering she resided in public housing. Shouldn't our first course of action be to involve the authorities? I pressed, prompting Wilson to flinch but remain fixated on the branch manager. Attempting to downplay the situation, Wilson suggested that terminating a $500,000 loan was inconsequential compared to her grandmother's purported loss of $100,000. However, her argument faltered under the manager's stern gaze, compelling her to retreat into silence. Wilson's oversight highlighted a fundamental flaw in her judgment, signaling her inadequacy as a banker. Such significant decisions necessitated the involvement of higher authorities, a principle she seemed oblivious to. The manager assured me of strict disciplinary action against Wilson before escorting her away. Reflecting on our relationship with the bank, I realized our company's current financial stability negated the necessity for loans. Initially perplexed by our borrowing practices despite having sufficient funds, I recalled my father's explanation about the financial challenges Smith Landscape Design had faced over the years, instilling a newfound understanding of our borrowing habits. Our enduring relationship with the banks had been pivotal during times of adversity. They extended their support whenever Smith Landscape Design faced financial challenges. Banks, driven by lending targets, often hesitated to extend help to struggling businesses with poor performance outlooks. Hence, it became imperative for us to secure loans even when we appeared financially stable. This strategic approach aimed to establish a repayment track record and foster trust with the banks, ensuring their assistance during future crises. Consequently, periodic borrowing became a norm for us. However, recent events raised concerns. The inexplicable behavior of a novice banker, coupled with the apparent indifference of a branch manager, eroded the trust we had painstakingly built. Doubts began to surface regarding entrusting our finances to such an institution, let alone seeking further loans. After consulting with my family, I arrived at a decision. The following day, I visited Trust Bank to convey our resolve. Having notified them beforehand, I was promptly escorted to the reception room. Upon arrival, there, I was met with courteous greetings from both the branch manager and Wilson. When I entered and faced their bowed heads, I addressed the matter of the loan, reassuring them that terminating it was acceptable since we hadn't utilized it yet. I emphasized our intention to repay it promptly. However, my words startled the branch manager, who quickly sat up in alarm. Despite his plea to maintain our long-standing relationship, my decision remained firm. Reflecting on what could have transpired had I not intervened, I couldn't entrust my affairs to a bank that tolerated such behavior from its employees. Thus, regretfully, I announced the end of our association. The manager's apologies and promises of strict action against the offending employee couldn't sway me. When I motioned to conclude our meeting, a bank employee barged in, clearly distressed. Sensing urgency, I excused myself. As the manager prepared to leave, a woman's voice echoed loudly, recounting a recent encounter with a disrespectful banker named Wilson. Witnessing the manager's worried reaction, I realized I wasn't alone in being affected. Before the manager could respond, his attention shifted, and I followed his gaze to Wilson, nervously biting her nails. Reacting swiftly, the manager dismissed her on the spot, prompting a stunned reaction from Wilson. Before she hastily exited the room, she offered a heartfelt plea, begging for forgiveness and another chance, but her apology rang hollow. While we were fortunate not to rely on the loan, I couldn't shake the thought of the many businesses that must have suffered due to Wilson's actions, despite not having the final say. The idea of her causing distress to businesses troubled me deeply. I confronted Wilson, expressing my frustration at the loss of valued customers because of her actions. Despite her pleas for another chance, I remained resolute in my decision to dismiss her. When the argument between Wilson and the manager seemed endless, I intervened. Delivering a final message to Wilson, I reminded her of her own words, highlighting that the consequences were of her own making. Her despair was evident when she collapsed under the weight of my words. Later, the branch manager approached me, pleading for another chance, but I refused. While Wilson was accountable for her behavior, the branch manager's failure to address it also contributed to the loss of customers. The exodus of customers continued, leading to the eventual closure of the branch and the demolition of the building, replaced by a park. Months later, I encountered a woman bearing a resemblance to Wilson, though her tan made it difficult to be certain. She seemed to be facing the consequences of her actions, now working as a traffic guard at a construction site. Witnessing her transformation, I hoped this experience would lead to a change of heart for her. Meanwhile, our landscaping business flourished. The visibility of our Smith Landscape Design truck led to an increase in requests for grass maintenance and landscaping in shared areas of parks, condominiums, and apartments. Adapting to the diverse needs of our clients became essential for our continued success. I was determined to contribute as a gardener and see our business Thrive, that's all about the first story, and now let's watch another similar story. I couldn't believe the audacity of this newcomer, daring to challenge me. The manager's voice reverberated in the room, her frustration palpable when she continued her tirade. Despite being accustomed to her outbursts due to my newcomer status, I had always gritted my teeth and endured, convinced I was falling short of expectations. But this time, I refused to yield. What's with that defiant look? You think you can challenge me and get away with it, she bellowed, her anger mounting. Though I firmly believed I was in the right, I knew neither the manager nor McLaren would relent. There are plenty more where you came from, she spat, her words stoking a fire of indignation within me. Yet, despite my resolve, I lacked the confidence to continue under her leadership. Fine then, I'll resign. I won't be in from tomorrow, I retorted. My decision final. I couldn't forgive the manager's words, nor McLaren's complicity. In that moment, I vowed to seek my revenge. My name is Ilana, a recent graduate and newcomer to the company. Since childhood, my passion has been animals, particularly dogs and cats. Landing a job in the pet industry felt like a dream come true. The company specialized in selling and wholesaling pet supplies, along with offering pet sitting services. Assigned to the pet sitting department, I found joy in caring for pets while their owners were away, ensuring their comfort and well-being. Despite my limited experience, I delighted in pleasing customers and interacting with the animals. Being an animal lover, this job fulfilled a lifelong dream. However, amidst the fulfillment, I faced a dilemma. My boss, the female manager, and my senior colleague, McLaren, formed an intimidating duo in the workplace. The female manager was known for her domineering and volatile demeanor, especially towards newcomers like myself. Under stress, she often resorted to harassment and was easily swayed by power dynamics. McLaren, being the son of a managing director, enjoyed an untouchable status, leveraging his family connections to evade scrutiny. Despite his lack of effort, he received preferential treatment, while I found myself on the receiving end of criticism, even for trivial matters like my hair color. The stark contrast in treatment between McLaren and me fueled my frustration. Adding insult to injury, the female manager questioned my capabilities, further undermining my confidence. As a newcomer, I acknowledged my limitations but couldn't discern any specific wrongdoing to warrant such harsh treatment. Yet, the female manager persisted in her relentless lectures, leaving me feeling demoralized and inadequate. Despite reassurances from colleagues, I couldn't shake off the constant fear of incurring the female manager's wrath. The prospect of working alongside McLaren only intensified my anxiety. During a client visit, McLaren abruptly delegated tasks to me before departing in the company car, leaving me bewildered and overwhelmed. In the face of daily harassment and unfair treatment, I struggled to maintain my composure and find a way to navigate the hostile work environment. I stood in silence, facing an empty client's house, unable to leave as instructed by McLaren. With no other choice, I followed his directives and worked alone until the client returned. Despite completing our tasks, I couldn't depart without McLaren, so I reluctantly called his mobile, only to be met with noisy chaos on the other end. McLaren's casual response indicated he was at a casino, abandoning his responsibilities for leisure. Fuming with anger, I concealed my emotions and requested permission to stay longer from the unaware client. 2 hours passed before McLaren finally returned. During our journey back to the office, I confronted him about his irresponsible behavior. His shocking indifference and arrogant dismissal of work as a hassle further fueled my anger. When I challenged him to quit if he found it bothersome, McLaren remained unaffected, casually suggesting I do as I pleased. Upon our return, the female manager launched into a tirade upon noticing our late arrival. When I attempted to explain, McLaren interjected, shifting the blame onto me for the delay. Stunned and speechless, I faced the brunt of the manager's scolding, accused of incompetence and inefficiency. Struggling to regain my composure, I confronted the female manager, attempting to clarify McLaren's negligence. However, my efforts were in vain as McLaren's absence at the client's location, caught up in a casino, remained unacknowledged. His 2-hour delay in picking me up only added to the mounting frustration and injustice of the situation. I mustered the courage to recount the events honestly to the female manager, hoping for understanding. Instead, she accused me of fabricating stories and questioned my motives for implicating McLaren. Her disbelief left me speechless, realizing arguing was futile. When she continued her tirade, I Couldn't comprehend why I, someone dedicated to my job and striving to excel, had to endure such unjust treatment. Her words, dripping with condescension, stung deeply. Despite her escalating anger, I couldn't accept being labeled a liar when I spoke the truth. The relentless barrage of accusations was unbearable. How dare you, a newcomer, oppose me, she thundered, dismissing my objections as ridiculous. I had endured her outbursts before, convinced it was a part of being new, of not meeting expectations, but on this occasion, I refused to back down. What's with that defiant look? You think you can defy me and get away with it? She sneered. My conviction remained unshaken. In this instance, both the female manager and McLaren were in the wrong, and I was determined not to yield. Her final words, "There are plenty more where you came from," ignited a fire within me. I knew I couldn't continue working under her tyranny. Understood. Then I'll resign. I won't be coming in from tomorrow. I declared, unable to forgive the injustice inflicted upon me by both the female manager and McLaren. The next day, having made the decision to resign, I spent the day at home, consumed by my thoughts, but amidst my self-absorption, I realized the impact my departure would have on the clients I served. It felt unjust to leave without informing them. With a heavy heart, I visited each client, explaining my resignation and expressing my gratitude, their pleas for me to stay, their genuine need for my services, overwhelmed me with emotion. Returning home, the mistreatment I endured at the hands of the female manager and McLaren lingered in my mind, fueling my anger and renewing my determination to seek justice. When I grappled with how to proceed, the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Curious about the visitor, I peered through the peephole and was taken aback to see the female manager and the CEO standing there. Visibly shaken, it dawned on me what was unfolding. The last thing I wanted revealed had come to light. The CEO, addressing me as Alana, which was none other than my father, ran the pet sitting company where I worked. However, I was adamant about not wanting my identity as the CEO's daughter overshadow my own accomplishments. I cherished my job and wished to be acknowledged based on my merits alone. The revelation was inevitable. My resignation rendered my efforts to keep it under wraps futile. The CEO proceeded to explain that a client had filed a complaint following my departure from their home earlier that day. Their dissatisfaction had reached the CEO's attention, prompting him to investigate. When the female manager recounted the events, her apology seemed contrite, yet I sensed an underlying motive, self-preservation. Disregarding her, I recounted the manager's actions in detail to my father, the CEO. I harbored no forgiveness. It was evident she operated to shield herself. Many employees, myself included, had endured the female manager's tyrannical behavior, leading some to tears and resignations. While we were passionate about our work and desired to continue, it was unfair that those who prioritized personal leisure over professional integrity thrived. Recognizing this injustice, the CEO extended an invitation for my return to the company. The following day, when I resumed my routine at work, my colleagues greeted me with concern and solidarity. They, too, expressed their discontent with the female manager and McLaren. Notably, both were conspicuously absent, the female manager confined to her home pending disciplinary action, and McLaren supposedly attending to a client. As we discussed these developments, the CEO arrived, visibly worried about my well-being. He listened intently when I recounted McLaren's transgressions, while my colleagues echoed their grievances against him. The CEO, after silently absorbing our complaints, swiftly took action, instructing his secretary to bring the car. He personally escorted me to the client's residence where McLaren was purportedly working. Upon arrival, we found no sign of the company vehicle. Redirecting the driver, we headed to a nearby casino, where, to our dismay, we discovered the company car parked outside. Navigating through the casino, we located McLaren engrossed in a winning streak at a slot machine. Despite the CEO's visible fury, McLaren initially failed to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Startled by the CEO's thunderous reprimand, McLaren attempted to deflect with a feeble excuse, claiming to be on a break. However, the CEO's unwavering intensity shattered McLaren's facade, exposing the depth of his deceit. Forced to confront his actions, McLaren trembled under the weight of the CEO's admonition. The CEO's stern words resonated, dispelling any notion of preferential treatment due to his familial ties. McLaren was promptly dismissed, reminded sternly that his privileged position did not exempt him from accountability. When McLaren slinked away, chastised and humbled, the CEO turned to me, issuing a Directive to attend an emergency board meeting the following day. It was a stark reminder that within the realm of professional conduct, no amount of privilege could shield one from the consequences of misconduct. As McLaren, now crestfallen, bowed his head in defeat, I resolved that the time for retribution against McLaren and the female manager had come. The following day, as I made my way to the board meeting called by the CEO, the executives were already assembled, spotting the female manager and McLaren among them. I couldn't help but notice McLaren's sudden nonchalance, a stark contrast to his demeanor just a day before. His complacency was bolstered by the assurance from the female manager that his father would shield him from consequences. Appalled by their twisted characters, I awaited the CEO's arrival to commence the meeting. As proceedings began, the CEO wasted no time in outlining the urgency of our gathering. However, McLaren's father, the MD, immediately interjected, questioning the necessity of such a meeting and seemingly intent on defending his son. Undeterred by the MD's attempt to deflect, the CEO turned to the gathered executives for their input. Unanimously, they concurred with the CEO's assessment. McLaren's dereliction of duty was a significant detriment to the company. It was a sentiment shared by anyone with a modicum of common sense. After elucidating McLaren's misconduct, the CEO directed his attention to the female manager, demanding an explanation for her behavior. Her feeble excuse, disguised as a plea for understanding, only served to stoke the CEO's ire. His rebuke reverberated through the meeting room, dismissing any notion of preferential treatment based on familial ties. As tensions escalated, the CEO dropped a bombshell, revealing the clandestine affair between the MD and the female manager. What had been mere rumors were now confirmed. Leaving me stunned by the revelation, suspicions had lingered, but the truth was more shocking than I could have imagined. The MD, who had so fiercely defended his son and the female manager, paled and became mute as the CEO highlighted the need of upholding proper behavior in the workplace. The fact that the MD was married and the female manager was single gave the scandal that was playing out before us even more weight. It was clear that this discovery might have personal as well as professional ramifications. The CEO turned to McLaren and demanded an explanation, effectively silencing the MD. When McLaren realized that his father could no longer defend him, he made a weak justification, saying that getting caught was just a coincidence and not representative of his normal conduct. I had had enough of his constant denial and interrupted, refuting McLaren's claim. I said, even if it was just a coincidence, did McLaren really think it justified what he was doing? His scowl, together with the ill will of the female manager, suggested that they blamed me for their situation. Relentlessly, I chose to unveil my winning card, which was a specific video clip taken with a pet camera. When the video was projected onto the screen, we saw McLaren absorbed in his phone and paying no attention to the pet he was looking after. Faced with indisputable proof, McLaren frantically looked for an explanation, as the female manager remained motionless next to him. I asked the executives a straightforward question: did they still think McLaren was doing properly in light of the damaging footage? Was this just a coincidence as well? I had had enough of the chaos these two people had produced, so I made the decision to face them and let them out of my feelings. Will you call me out on lying once more? Why not submit your resignation right away if you hate your job so much? I questioned them without giving them an opportunity to respond. They both hung their heads silently. The business does not exist to satisfy your wants. How come your irrational actions should compel people who truly enjoy what they do to leave? The two with downturned mouths and heated faces had been gazing at me only moments before. The executives watched them, their faces expressionless. I wasn't planning on depending on my father's CEO status, but I was happy that he called this executive meeting so I could finally talk to the female manager and McLaren about how I felt. I had asked the CEO to put in a covert camera to watch over the conference room before the meeting started. For my colleagues who had also suffered under their despotism, it must have been a comfort to see the once haughty pair suddenly diminished. The CEO and other executives began to question the female manager and McLaren as the meeting went on, pressing them to accept accountability for their actions. Compared to who they used to be, they seemed defeated. Do you have anything to add to what you've heard so far? Asked the boss. The female manager resigned, and McLaren apologized quietly for their transgression. That was the turning point when the long-standing dissatisfaction I had carried finally vanished. McLaren quit a few days following the board meeting, ahead of any official reprimand from the business. I've heard from co-workers that he no longer even looks for work, choosing instead to spend his days at the casino. Conversely, the The female manager was demoted and is now subordinate to staff members who have less experience than she has, the former female manager of the office waved to me one day, but she didn't make eye contact, looking as proud as ever, but she was the only one at fault. I hoped that now that she was being reprimanded by a junior executive who had taken over as her supervisor, she would suffer the same awful sensation that she had caused others. The CEO called me a few years later and inquired as to why I felt the need to conceal the fact that I was the CEO's daughter. I wanted to be appreciated for my unique contributions at work, not treated any differently because of my relationship. As I love what I do, I told the CEO how I really felt. Is that not sufficient? I have a lot of clients that love me, and I should be grateful for that. My acquaintance, a breeder, was introduced to me by clients who had consistently asked me to sit for them. This led to references from other clients who said I could be trusted with their dogs. My clientele increased as a result, and I had daily business. I was quickly elevated to manager after it was determined that I consistently satisfied the clients. According to what I've heard from coworkers, I received an incredible promotion that made waves inside the organization, but nobody realized it was because I'm the daughter of the CEO. For me, the most satisfying thing was to be recognized as a unique individual. Being appreciated for the work I actually love makes me feel content and joyful, and I'm resolved to keep working for more fulfilling days in the future. Above is today's story. If you like it, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. See you next time.